Then Kalen DeBoer took the stand. He had a really, really good opening statement. His opening statement, a lot of it was thanking Greg Sankey and Greg Byrne and the administration and the players, especially the captains that were on staff. From a Sankey and Greg Byrne perspective, he talked about, him being the first, this being his first time in the SEC. Sankey had done a really, really good job, making sure the coaches had whatever they needed, making sure that everyone was aware of how the different changes were going to be taking place, how the different rule changes, or anything like that. I thought that, he obviously gave them their props. He talked to Greg, mentioning that Greg Byrne and everyone on the university side had done a really good job kind of supporting him and just gave the shout out to them that they deserved. Then when he kind of started talking more about specifics as it relates to the team, he talked about how opening practice is not going to happen until about 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from today, I believe he said. So I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon. So 2 weeks. So at the very end of July is when opening practice is going to happen. Additionally, he talked about the fact that he thought that, again, everybody is doing things the right way. That's what it kept over and over saying, is that we know we didn't achieve our goal, but even though we didn't achieve our goal, everyone is doing the things in the right way and the way that they should be done to be able to achieve that goal in the future. And so a lot of it was kind of focused on that. He, really kind of emphasized that he thought that everyone was doing their job and everyone was doing it in the way that they're supposed to be doing it. Kalen DeBoer was then asked a little bit about, and one of the ones that I kind of wanted to highlight, he was asked about Ryan Grubb. Obviously, originally thinking that Ryan Grubb and Charles Huff were going to be coming with him to Alabama, and then all of a sudden Grubb and then Huff take jobs with the Seattle Seahawks. He was asked about that and the specificity to that. And, he talked about it being a bittersweet feeling. Obviously, you're very happy for a guy that you've known for many, many years to be able to get a job to coach in the NFL. You're happy for that, possibility for him and that additional career growth for him. However, you're sad because you know that he could do great things with you on campus at Alabama. It's the reason you offered him the job in the first place. And so he talked about how having Grubb back does, help him in a way that he thinks that, not to say that Sheridan was bad at his job in any way, but that having Grubb back he thinks is going to be good. And obviously, they've worked well together over the course of the past, quite a few years. So he thought that Grubb being back with him was going to be a very big deal for the offense. He again reiterated that if the game were to be played today, that Ty Simpson would be your starting quarterback. He made sure to note, and I know Caden Proctor also noted when asked about the quarterback battle, that all three guys have talent and all three guys have a level where they can all do things very, very well, but they're all, a work in progress, but not in a bad way. A work in progress is in, hey, he's told them, you can't stay stagnant. If the game was going to be played today, yes, Ty Simpson's our starting quarterback, but every single one of you have the ability to play to your potential. And if you play to your potential, then we will see what happens, right? But as of now, Ty Simpson is your starting quarterback. That's something that we have said many, many times. I fully expect Ty to be your starter. I know I've talked a lot about it on this show. I expect Ty to be your starter. I think personally Ty plays well enough to make his way to the NFL draft and that you get Keelan Russell next season. So that's personally where I stand as it relates to the quarterback battle. Kalen DeBoer didn't go into obviously that much depth, but he did specifically mention that Ty would be your starting quarterback if the season were to start today. Some of the other things that I thought, he just kind of finished up with was, again, when you're looking at what Alabama has done well, he mentioned that Alabama he thought that last season, when you transition from a guy like Nick Saban, you're worried about buy-in to a degree. You're worried about, maintaining culture. You're worried about so many different things, right? Because Alabama had obviously an elite program when Saban was here. So he was asked a little bit about that. And the way that he specifically referred to it is, we'll go to like him bringing Saban. He said the reason that obviously Saban came is he felt like having the recruits be able to meet Saban was almost like giving people a, he said it like a present almost, but having, these recruits be able to meet somebody that obviously I'm sure that they idolized, some of which had met him. I don't believe all of them had, but Saban was willing to do so. He specifically didn't mention it, but I do know another reason was because him and his staff were at Keelan Russell's sister's funeral. So with Nick Saban being on campus already, or in Tuscaloosa already, for the Nick's Kids Foundation event that they had going on, Nick was able to step over and assist. And obviously that is a special thing that you can show, recruits of, hey, he can talk about the dominance, and anybody that's ever been in this state or, around college football over the past 17 years, the kind of gravitas that Nick Saban has. The additional thing that Kalen DeBoer talked about is he was specifically, and we're going more into the culture side, he was specifically asked about, hey, how are you able to keep guys from going into the portal, right? A lot was said about how Alabama didn't lose a single guy in the spring portal. And he talked about it being mostly as it relates to culture, right? The fact that the guys have officially bought into what him and his system does. And that's something that we talked about, right? We talked about it was a very big deal that these players had now committed to Kalen DeBoer and his staff on over 3 separate occasions, right? The transfer portal had opened 3 times and they had stayed on all 3 times. So any player that's currently still on the roster at the University of Alabama wants to be on Kalen DeBoer's roster. They weren't there because they thought, oh, he's going to be able to be Nick Saban, or oh, he's going to do this. No, you've played for him for an entire season. You know exactly what he's like on the field. You know what he's like during summer practice. You know what he's like during fall camp. It's been a full season, right? So that was a big thing that he kind of talked about as, he has been able to build a culture, and that culture is the guys wanting to, be able to recruit for each other, right? I know Tim Keenan talked about grilling out for some of the recruits and them treating it like a brotherhood. So the players that are actively on the roster helping recruit the players trying to get, the Alabama's trying to get onto the roster. And then everything that goes with that. Again, whether it be, how they conduct practice, how they, speak to each other, whatever, right? Like the culture is the day-to-day operations. It's not just what happens on the football field. And he thought that a lot of that was the reason why, guys didn't leave, right? And again, that's something that we have talked about. I believe that very confidently. I think that Kalen DeBoer has done a great job continuing to build the Alabama brand into what it is. I thought that Alabama, and everything that he did in this SEC Media Days, I thought that Kalen DeBoer, conducted himself as well as we could have expected. I thought that all of his answers to the questions were great. I thought that nobody really tried to trip him up too much, but I thought that overall it was what you would expect out of a Media Day event. Again, if you were expecting to get some hard-hitting, crazy question, that's just not what these events are. These events are really, coaches that have been trained on, hey, these are the type answers that we're kind of looking for. This is what our expectation is for next season. And, they're kind of, to a degree, media trained on, hey, this is the, I don't want to say agenda, but this is the notion that you need to put out for everyone, because they know that, again, every reporter in the entire Southeast is going to be here, right? So in my mind, it was exactly what I expected Media Days to be. I do think that there were some good things that were said. I think there were some things that we can take out of Media Days. I think that there's some things that you definitely can look at and be like, hey, this is something that was pointed out. But again, I don't think that if you're going to SEC Media Days for hot takes from the coaches or players, that's just not realistic on generally what you're going to see from the University of Alabama at a minimum. Now, some other schools you may hear some like semi-hot takes or whatever, but a lot of these schools are going to give kind of their bulletin board material, and that's what they're going to talk about, because that's what SEC Media Days is all about. I know there wasn't a ton of like super hard-hitting information, but I just wanted to cover it for anybody that may have missed it. As always, if you are interested, I will actually link it down in the bottom. But the University of Alabama's YouTube page, the Alabama Athletics YouTube page, they posted Tim Keenan, Caden Proctor, Deontay Lawson, and Kalen DeBoer's comments at SEC Media Days. All the players spoke for about 10 minutes apiece, and then Kalen DeBoer spoke for about 30 minutes. So if you are interested, I will link them all in the bottom. I do think that they all are worth a watch. But again, just know what you're expecting when you go into something like this. Don't expect, a podcast interview. Expect, somebody that's, giving a media polished answer, and to a degree answering the question that they want to have been asked, but in some cases weren't exactly asked. I think that it was a really, really good media days. I thought that, Alabama represented themselves very well, and, I'm happy to cover it. Hopefully I'll have a little bit more hard-hitting things that we can talk about later on next week. Like I said, I do plan to try to work on getting that interview that I have kind of hinted at a couple of times squared away. As I said, I think the guy's actually at Media Day, so it's been a little difficult getting in touch with his team. But I do have some other people lined up that I know everyone will be very happy to see, especially some of you guys that are very interested in basketball. I have a couple of basketball-specific guests that I already have lined up that I'm very happy about. So if you are interested, please subscribe to the channel. Please follow along for all the content. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.